Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy. My guest today is Toni Buzzeo. Buzzeo. Toni is a children's book author. She has done, Toni started out as a college and high school writing teacher, moved into the librarian space, worked with many publishers and, authors and stuff like that. And so then she started writing books. She has now done 31 picture books. She's also done 11 books for teachers and librarians and also an actual novel. And her most recent book that just came out a few weeks ago is called Buzz, Being Brave Around Buzzy Stinging Insects. So, Toni, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited for this. This is like perfect timing for this too, right? With all the pollinators and the flowers blooming and summertime.
Right. Absolutely the perfect time for it.
So thank you so much for being here. You have such it's a really big message, not just about insects, but the purpose of the insects and how, we were just talking before we hit record, like the importance of coexisting with them, appreciation, and
Yeah.
And you had said, because I said, I was just picking strawberries this morning and, something buzzed by me. And I have in my past, I was terrified of being stung by stinging insects. And so I was like, I can't just run. Like, I know that they're doing such important work. And you said, no, you should never run. And I know I've heard that so many times, like, you're not supposed to, you don't run from them, but at the same time, like, I don't want it to sting me. So
Right.
I'm really appreciative to have this opportunity to speak with you and learn more about how to interact and how to, be around them and appreciate them. I mean, you've done so much research in your life and I'm curious what the inspiration was for this book.
Well, I'm lucky enough to live in a two-family home downstairs from my son and daughter-in-law and two grandchildren in East Arlington, Massachusetts. And when my grandchildren were tiny, we spent a lot of time in our speaking of tiny, our very tiny backyard. And both of them were very frightened of stinging insects and were cautious even to go in the yard because of the many bees that were in the yard. And that got me thinking that all of the work that I was doing to make them not afraid actually needed to go into a book that would help other kids and possibly adults too who are afraid of stinging insects.
Mm. Well, it's such an important role that they carry, and we need them. We need them.
We need them.
And so we need to learn to appreciate and understand why they're there and how to interact with them. Like,
right. How to be present in the same space as they are. And it really is a very simple thing. Never run because they will chase you. So you're inviting exactly what you don't want if you run. Become quiet. Don't scream, because even though bees and wasps and hornets don't have ears, they hear sound vibrations. So screaming makes them fearful. And when they're afraid, they may sting.
right.
And the third thing is to walk quietly away, looking at the ground. Because something that a lot of people don't know is that there are many solitary bees that live in the ground. So you need to also be careful where you're stepping. So those are the 3 rules. And it's simple and very hard if you're afraid of bees. It's very hard not to do swatting. That is the automatic.
Definitely don't do that.
Don't swat. They will be afraid and they may sting you. Don't yell. Don't run. Walk quietly away, or if you're brave enough, put on your science eyes, tune up your curiosity, and look carefully at what they're doing. And that's what I taught my grandchildren to do. Let's just be absolutely quiet and watch what they're doing.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I've seen so many pictures, and they may be AI, but the pictures of the bumblebees that have all that pollen on their back legs,
Yes.
and they're all fuzzy,
Yes.
or if they're
Yeah.
sleeping on a
Yes.
on a flower petal, like it just
Right.
it just makes them more I want to say human, but just like it gives them purpose. It gives them
Purpose.
yeah. It makes you feel connected to them because they're you can see that they're working hard, and then they need naps.
They are. They're working so hard. And in my research, I had a lot of interest in like how much of our food is a result of pollination. And there's some difference of opinion, but at least 1/3 or 1 in every 3 bites that we take is as a result of pollination. So one of the lines in the book that I'm particularly fond of that's told with humor is, well, you see the problem. No bees, no food, no you, no me.
Yeah.
So we need them. They are our partners. They're our collaborators.
Ooh. Yeah. Oh, it ties everything together, because when you started to say, no bees, no food, no you, no me, I always think of the no farms, no food, like bumper
Yes.
sticker. And
Right.
it just expands that. Like, we don't have farms without bees and pollinators to do their job.
That's right.
Okay. That's very deep. Okay, so tell us about the story Buzz.
So Buzz started actually with my impulse to write something about stinging insects, particularly honeybees. It started as a fiction story of a child who was visiting an older person, perhaps a relative, perhaps a grandparent, and learning about that person's garden. When I sent it off to my editor, who had actually requested the book because she had children who were afraid of bees, she said, "No, I don't think we want a story. I think we want a straight up nonfiction book about bees and other pollinators and how important they are, and how, yes, they're stingy, but you don't have to get stung. Try that." So it was quite a challenge to move from this. I tend to be a very lyrical fiction writer, to move from that lyrical fiction approach to nonfiction. So when you ask, tell me about the story,
It's actually not a story.
It's not a story. It's a nonfiction book for, I think the publisher's depiction is 4 to 8-year-olds, and I think that's exactly right. Although not to say that a 3-year-old or a 10-year-old can't appreciate it. So it is meant to be an introduction to buzzy, stinging pollinators and how to coexist with them. And the story takes place, as so often happens in a picture book, in the illustrations because my fabulous illustrator, Joe Cepeda, decided to have 3 child characters who were learning the rules about being careful and wise around stinging insects, but also having those curious and science eyes that would allow them to look carefully at the insects and learn all that they could learn.
Okay. As you were talking about this, Toni, I was thinking like this would be, oh, I was thinking many things, and I was actually listening, but I'm thinking about the fact that the fear of stinging insects is probably not started with this one person, like it maybe was inherited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it might be a really great thing for a child to come to this book and start reading this book and read it to their parents to show them how well they're reading. And the parents would be like, oh. So when you're
Yes.
saying 4 to 8 years old, I'm like, and you said maybe 3, maybe 10. I'm like, and if they're reading
You
it to
know.
their parents, maybe 30s.
At my book launch, the first thing I did before I read the book was to ask how many children in the audience were afraid of being stung, and how many then they raised their hands, and then they put their hands down, and I asked how many adults were afraid of being stung. It was a sizable portion of the audience.
Yeah. Right. And I wonder if you were to ask like how many people have been stung and live to tell. Like,
Right, exactly true. I did ask how many people in the audience have been stung. And again, a sizable portion of the audience had been stung.
mhm. Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you asked that question. I think it would be really interesting because I'm sure, the people that are afraid are, it's not necessarily rational, right? Like
that's
I know
right.
my fear of birds and stinging insects is not necessarily rational, but
Right.
it's still there. And so just to say, this many people have been stung before and look, they're fine.
Right, right. And that is what the portion of the book that's about being stung does, both visually through Joe's illustrations and also through the text. Says that sometimes we do get stung, and here's what happens: it hurts for a moment. We have a red bump. We need to wash it. We need to, well, if you're a child, get some help from an adult to do this, and maybe put on some anti-itch cream, and then in a little while it goes away.
Yeah.
So it's both informative. The book is both informative and reassuring, and the reviews have called out the reassuring nature of the book and the opportunity for kids to see exactly what you just said, that one can be stung and come out on the other side feeling just fine. But I do also make a nod to the fact that some people are very allergic to bees, and for them, it's a very different caution that needs to be put in place. And one of the children at the book launch raised her hand when I said, "Is there anybody who is very allergic to bees?" And that's an important thing for that child to know, for each child who is seriously allergic.
Right. And do you think that this would be a good time to read the letter that you were just
Oh
reading to me?
yes, that would so. I've done 2 events so far, and one of them was the book launch, and we can talk about that some more in a little while. It was a pretty amazing experience, and I'll tell you why. But after the launch, I got this note from my fellow children's author, Jane Sutton. Her 7-year-old granddaughter, Gabby, was at the launch event, of course, and listened to me read it and got a signed copy. And Jane wrote me this note: The launch made quite an impression on Gabby, who used to be very, very afraid of bees. Near the bus stop yesterday, there was a big area of clover, and she and I were looking at bees, which she commented were drinking nectar. I was amazed when she picked one of the clover flowers and held it out in hopes that a bee would drink from it. It was the way she would have held out grass for a goat. So my book did its job with Gabby, and I hope that my book does its job with lots and lots of kids who are not afraid of bees and wasps and hornets, but most especially for kids who are.
Right. And how old are your grandchildren?
My grandchildren are now 10 and 12.
Okay.
But we have lived here since they were 4 months and 2. So I've been working on this angle of desensitization about stinging insects for a long time.
Yeah. And so you said this was a request from your editor.
Yeah, well, it was first my original idea because I had these little ones who were, 3 and 5, say, who were terrified of stinging insects. And I ran it by her, and she said, "Oh my gosh, my children are so afraid of stinging insects. Write that book." So I hadn't written anything yet when I approached her with the idea, and she saw the universality of it. Actually, though, she ended up not being the editor for the book through a series of, submissions take their own path. And while she very much loved the book, there was another bee book that was published by another person at the company, just one of those situations. And so I went on to another editor who doesn't have young children, but saw the delight in the book and was happy to acquire it. So.
Okay. But so it was the editor that said, your editor that was not the editor for this book, that said it shouldn't be a storybook, it should be a nonfiction.
And
so
I was
she
really
didn't end
glad.
up editing it.
Right. She shaped the book thoroughly, but she was not ultimately the editor. But I never thought, of course, I continued on with submissions of that manuscript. I never thought of going back. Once I wrote it as nonfiction, it was just so clear to me that this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Do you know if that editor got a copy?
What an interesting question. I think I'll send her a copy. Yeah. What a great idea. She'll appreciate it. I mean, she will appreciate it.
Either way, I think that's such a fascinating journey of the book, and so interesting that editor didn't actually had such an impact on the
Yes.
journey of the book,
Yes.
but then didn't end up being involved in it.
Yes, it is really, it's so different now in children's publishing. If you want to talk about children's publishing for a minute, it used to be long ago. It used to be that an author, children's author, would land a contract with an editor, and that editor would publish all of that author.
Stay with them.
Yes. And when I sold my first picture book, it was in the year 2000. So I started writing in 1995, and I landed my first contract in 2000. So that took 5 years. And she published the first book. She acquired my second book. And then she said to me over lunch in New York, "Toni, I just want to be clear. We don't live in the world where an editor acquires every manuscript from an author. Please always feel comfortable to submit your work to other editors. So in that background, fast forward to 2024, when I finally sold this manuscript to a different editor, it wasn't unusual to have had an editor whom I'd worked on other books with before. We have 4 under our belt, to say, I am going to pass on this one. Let's see what we'll do now.
And is that just like a wondering how it could be different? Like trying a different editor, publisher? Or is that like I'm not feeling what
It's
as excited as
usual.
maybe I could?
Yes, it's usually the case of an author believing that they have the perfect manuscript for a particular editor, hopefully in this case one that they've worked with before, and who is likely to have a high interest in that book, for instance, because she had young children. And then the editor, for whatever reason, sometimes matters of the publishing house or the list being full or a lack of personal attachment to the approach that's been taken, will say, I'm going to pass on this one. And then the author's job or the author's agent's job is to go out and find another perfect target. And sometimes that takes a lot of submissions and a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've got tons of patience, because I don't know if I would wait 5 years. I would be like, this is not going to happen. Forget it. That shows your dedication to the work. And I guess that shows my not being ready for the work.
I think what's important for people who are launching a career as an traditionally published author, so that meaning by a publishing house that is responsible for bringing the book out and into the world. Remember, we live in an environment where a lot of people are able to choose to publish their own work, but if you're going to be traditionally published, I think it's absolutely essential that you have a community of other authors, and that some of those other authors be traditionally published people who can say, I know it's really hard, but it's going to happen. You have to stick with it.
Right. I mean, I think that's just me in this like unsettled stage. Good for you. And I do also want to mention that Ms. Toni she was awarded a Caldecott honor, a 2013 Caldecott honor for her book called One Cool Friend. So this is not a one-time thing. She's written 31 picture books, and one of them was a Caldecott honor.
That is the way to say it. One of my books, One Cool Friend, won a Caldecott honor. I did not win the Caldecott honor. However, the Caldecott is given for the illustrations. And my amazing illustrator, David Small, earned a Caldecott honor.
How do you find these people?
Well, in this case, with One Cool Friend, which I'll take a moment to say, is the story of a young boy who takes home a penguin from the New England Aquarium because he thought his father said that he could. And then hijinks ensue, of course. That book was absolutely difficult to find the perfect illustrator for. And the reason was that many of the illustrators that my editor approached, and the editor and the art director are the ones who make the final determination about who will be approached for illustration. But
really,
I have a long career, and so of course I'm always consulted about that.
Okay.
Many of the illustrators that we thought were going to be a great choice were instead wanting to both write and illustrate their own books, not to illustrate someone else's work. And we got, I would say, 4, maybe 5 turndowns for that reason. Not that the illustrator didn't love the story, didn't see great potential, but really wanted to focus on both writing and publishing their own work.
Okay.
So it was with enormous appreciation that we accepted David's willingness to illustrate this book. And oh my goodness, his illustrations are just fabulous. They're, he won a Caldecott honor for those illustrations. Sometimes other authors say, but you wrote the book. And yes, indeed, I did write the book, and the book guided the illustrations. But boy, David knocked it out of the park.
So I guess I didn't realize that the Caldecott honor is for the illustration, not for the story.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. And I asked how you found these people, like the editor, the illustrator and stuff. I have had a children's story in my head for 20 years, maybe. And I'm like, but I am not an artist. And how am I supposed to find someone to do something like that?
Right. So unless you're self-publishing, if you're self-publishing, you really do have the job of finding somebody yourself. If you're planning to traditionally publish, what you're looking for is an editor who will take on the project at the publishing house, and then that editor will work in concert with either the art director or the designer on the team, and they will find and match the illustrator.
Okay, so you find the editor, and the editor has the connections to get the right people. Right. Okay.
Exactly.
I don't think it's going to be a series. It's just a story.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I feel like let's see. I had written down some notes, and I just want to. So we talked about the work that pollinators do, and I know that there's always more to it. Like, I feel like we simplify their job a lot, but also, I mean, you had said, no, we don't have bees, we don't have food, we don't have plants, we don't have, we don't have us because we need food to live. But there's more to it, because you had mentioned pollinators in our ecosystem. So, and then also we need to have, we need to create and encourage wild spaces so that they can thrive.
Let me talk about that a little bit. I think that it's important to think about, and here's what I think about sustainability. It's important to think about our world as a single unit, right? We live on the planet Earth, and every other creature that shares the planet with us lives here too. And when we think about sustainability, we think about how are we going to meet human needs right now without compromising humans in the future, a year, a century, a millennia, from meeting their needs. So we can't just think about the moment. And there are balanced loops in nature. Let's think about predators and prey, and that doesn't necessarily apply to insects. But if the prey population is diminished, then the predators of that prey population is diminished in time, right? It's a closed loop, right? When we think about these insects, these essential pollinators, it's more of a balanced loop. So there has to be enough flowers and plants. Let's not just focus on flowers. There have to be enough plants for the pollinators to pollinate and also to survive. And when we think about flowers, we think about them drinking nectar. And in order for plants to survive, there have to be enough pollinators, right? So it's a balanced system, not unlike that predator-prey system. So here's the thing. In a perfect world, that which we don't have right now, we all know that. In a perfect world, that all works well. But what's happening now, and has been happening for a while, and is the reason that we read a lot about the bee populations in particular diminishing, is that pollination populations are falling because they've lost habitat. The necessity of flowering plants, including those flowering plants that become vegetables that we eat, is a problem. Pesticides being used in farming and just in our yards are a problem. And climate change is a problem. And I needed to learn a little bit more about that, about the climate change piece, because I didn't understand how climate change would affect pollination and pollinators. Well, here's what I learned. What I learned is that as winters get warmer, pollinators like honeybees, for instance, leave their nests earlier because it's the temperature indicates that they should come out. But the plants aren't keeping pace with that. So they come out and there aren't plants for them to drink nectar from, to pollinate. And likewise, the heat in summer is too intense for honeybees to do the work that they need to do, keeping the hive operating smoothly. So those are the three big problems. But the other problem is something that we've done in farming. So let's not think of our backyard gardens. Let's think about big agriculture. We've tended, unlike when my grandmother lived on what was called a truck farm in western Michigan, where they grew enough food for their family, but then also lots of food they can load into their truck and take to the market to sell, where there was a lot of variety. Big agriculture now is working to have huge fields that are dedicated to a single plant, a single soybeans or corn or whatever. And that is all a huge farm might be raising. And because of that monoculture, there's not a diversity of plants that those pollinators can go from one to the other. Okay. From the clover that Gabby picked at the bus stop to the coneflower in my backyard, that they're only encountering a single crop. And so that's really a problem too. And then just one other thing that it probably should be folded into the mix is air pollution. And we certainly, everyone on the planet suffers from air pollution, but pollinators, those teeny tiny insects, are also very much affected by the inability to breathe
Yeah.
and survive in a polluted environment.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I always think of, when I think of pollinators, besides flowers, I'm thinking about, like, I have a friend who grows gourds. So, yeah, he grows gourds and he makes lampshades or lamps and bird houses and stuff like that. And so they like paint on pollen, like they take it from one flower and put it on another flower
Yes.
to share the pollen. And I
Yes.
just want, if that must be because there's a shortage, that the population has declined.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And
and
population of all pollinators has declined,
yeah,
butterflies and bees. I wanted to take a minute to talk about the fact that my book also includes wasps and hornets. And they actually are the insects that kids are most often afraid of because they're a little more aggressive than honeybees.
right.
Um, and do you know that all hornets are wasps? It's
No.
a subcategory of wasps. I learned that in my research. I didn't know that before. The fact that those are more aggressive pollinators has an interesting piece to it. While they do some pollinating, that's not their superpower. They're actually superhero predators. So they find pests, unwelcome insects, on plants, including, of course, food plants, and they take those pests away from the plant and bring them back to their nest to feed their babies.
What are their prey? Is it going to be like aphids? And I
Yes,
mean, because they're smaller
exactly.
than them.
Right, right. So little tiny insects that are eating the leaves on your climbing beans are captured by wasps and subset hornets and taken back to the nest. So that is their biggest contribution. They are also pollinators, but that's not
It's
what their
not their
biggest
main job.
contribution
Yeah.
is. Yeah, their
Wow.
main job is keeping our plants healthy. Isn't
That
that cool?
that's fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
that definitely gives me an appreciation for those stinging
Yes.
guys.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I mean that's what my fear of stinging insects, like I said, is not necessarily rational, but I will tell someone a million times, like, if I come across something that is yellow and definitely in the like stinging insect family, I'm not gonna wait to find out which one it is. I don't know that well the difference. So I'm just gonna remove myself.
Right. And you're going to do it this way. You're not going to swat,
Right.
not going to
I'm not
wave
gonna
your
scream.
hands, not going to scream. You're going to freeze. And if you want to turn away, you're going to proceed slowly
And
and
quiet.
carefully,
Yep.
looking at the ground, because it is possible that the insects that you're seeing are ground insects too. So you don't want to step on them.
No, that would make them very mad.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I want to get back to you. We were talking about, or you had mentioned, the lack of work for the pollinators. By the monocrops and stuff like that. I also want to add grass.
Yes.
Like, people are obsessed with grass. They want the perfect lawn, and they
Yes.
are using stuff that is not necessarily great. I know that where I was living in Virginia, the options for grass seed were all treated. And
Oh.
um,
Oh.
and I don't care about grass. Like, I can't eat grass. It doesn't do anything for me. And so I'm like all the wildflowers, everything that I can think of. But we have to get past that obsession with grass. Like it doesn't do anything. You could have a patch of grass, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like we
Yeah.
really need those pollinators.
Right.
Because as Toni said, like without the pollinators, we don't have food, and we need that. We really need that. So just something to think about. Very, very kindly.
I had the great good fortune when I was researching this book to find a person who's super knowledgeable about bees. And as my editor, Grace, came to call him, Nick was our expert, and we deferred to him in all things. So much like myself and my editor, Grace, and my illustrator, Joe, we were doing the best with the knowledge that we had. But it was Nick Dorian, who is our expert, who was willing in every case. I can't say enough positive about in writing nonfiction, and especially for me in writing about the natural world, that we have involved in our projects people who really know and study the creatures that we're writing about. And so Nick went over every bit of text in the book and gave so much feedback about making sure that all of the text was accurate. And then, of course, really making sure that the accompanying illustrations were also accurate. Mm-hmm. We came to the point, and the way illustration works in a children's book is that there are first rough sketches, and in the best of all worlds, the not just the editor and the art director, but the author as well gives feedback about those. And that's what's happened for me in every one of my picture books that I've had an opportunity to comment.
Oh, that's good. That's good, because I mean, you had said you don't necessarily get to choose the illustrator. The editor does that, so you don't have a say in that. But you get to give feedback on the actual work. That's good.
Right. And if you're at the stage of career that I am at, I'm very fortunate to have a lot of input about who the illustrator may be. But in the case of Joe, it's his charming children that he depicts on the page that were the big draw for us to have his child characters in the book. And he doesn't claim to be an insect expert any more than I do. So I knew that I needed to have an insect expert involved. And at one point, Grace, my editor, said, "There are the cutest little bees in my yard. They're ground bees, and I don't know what they are, but could we have them in our book?" And I said, "Well, I guess we should ask Nick about that, right? Because Nick is going to know." And we were able to identify, she used iNature, and we were able to identify the bees. And I said, "So Nick, here's the question. Can those bees be in the book?" And he said, "Well, they're very early spring bees, and their time of being out in the world is very limited. So if you want the book to be about a whole summer season..."
Got it. That's not accurate.
Then no, we have to say that's not a good idea. But he said there are other ground bees in that same family of ground bees that do extend their lives into the summer months. So let's see whether those cousins would be a good choice for the ground bees. And we all agreed on that. And of course, I mean, having a really talented and very experienced illustrator is I can't say enough about the importance of that, because it's got to be somebody with nonfiction, especially, who takes that feedback very seriously and incorporates it all. And then, we dug into, well, what specific species of bee, wasp, and hornet are we going to depict in the book? And Nick was wonderful in guiding our choices there. And then from there, we could say, well, what flower should be depicted given those 3 insect categories? So, it's a collaborative project.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, what a team effort.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I always think of writing a story as being like, you are the main character and all these people are supporting characters, but like none of it happens without any of them.
That's right. That's right. And it is just delightful for me as a librarian who spent her career working in collaborative practice as a school librarian with the teachers in my buildings. It's delightful for me to be 100% in on this particular career now that is just the same. It's about collaboration.
It was just warming you up for this.
It was. It totally was.
Oh my gosh, Toni, I love this. It's so fascinating to learn about the process. And so now you have this whole other, like, sort of genre of book under your belt as a nonfiction children's book, not sort of separate from the other 31. Or do you consider this a picture book?
It is a picture book. It's a nonfiction picture book, and it is not my first nonfiction picture book. I have a couple of biographies of women scientists that are picture books, illustrated picture books. Those were my first nonfiction efforts. And then I have a series of 4 books about professions that are board books. Sort of whose job. They are titled Whose Tools, Whose Truck, Whose Boat, and Whose Big Rig. So those are also nonfiction books. I have a book about eating a variety of plants called Eat Your Superpowers, and it's all about
SOUPER?
Super, SUPER.
Okay.
Eat Your Superpowers, and it's about eating vegetables, fruits, and grains, so basing your diet there and eating across the rainbow of colors. And I have one about road signs, and it's meant to be held by the little one in a car seat, looking at all the road signs that you encounter as you're driving around. So I've taken the nonfiction in a lot of different directions as well.
Okay.
And I always find an expert.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me what's next. Do you have something in the works already?
I do. I have another book coming with Grace, my editor for Buzz. It is called This Is My World. And it is a bit in keeping with this same sensitivity about us all being a part of this world and part of this earth. It's for little ones, I would say maybe 3 to 6 year olds, and it starts in a child's bedroom, which is where they are the shepherd of the environment, and goes to the broader house and then the yard and the community. So that will be out in 2028, so 2 years. I'm simultaneously always submitting other picture book manuscripts, so I have several on submission. And I am working on a very large project, which is breaking out of all of my other categories. It's a young adult novel in verse, set in the late 1960s, and capturing the complications of the in the life of a girl who is a high school senior, a talented pianist who wants to go on to college and study to be a concert pianist in a family where that is not a shared vision with her parents.
Okay. How, oh, that's so much. So you're constantly writing. How do you come up with all these different ideas?
They visit me, I don't go looking for them. Ideas come to me, and
You're just
some
like a
come to me,
vessel.
and yes, some come to me with insistence that I work on them right now, and others come to me and I put them in my idea file, and I'm never at a loss for what I will write next.
Okay. All right. And so you said, as far as sustainability, like it sounds like your thoughts are to not live right now. I mean, to live right now, but to be considering decades, generations out, so that we are not. Um, I'm the
Compromising.
yeah, yep, compromising their quality.
And for me, that isn't only about, all the things I care about, like eating healthy organic foods, which is all that I eat, and recycling as much as possible and purchasing in conscious ways. But for me, it's also about passing on my knowledge and commitment to, first of all, the two young people who live in my immediate family and house, but then through my books to pass along that reverence and respect for the world to not even just the current generation, but all of the generations of children who will read my book.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's wonderful. Okay, so tell us how can we find Toni Buzzeo, all the books that you've written, and just like follow you to learn what's coming next and learn more about you.
Well, the first step would be to go to my website, which is so simple, www.tonibuzzeo.com, and that's Toni with an I. And
And
you'll
buzz with two Z's.
two Z's, right? Buzzeo. My editor said, "How could I not buy this book? It's
Right?
like the title is your
How has this
name."
been not like your first book?
I know, right? Right? Why didn't I think of this before? So my website has lots of information about me, and of course, if you're local to the Boston area, information about my events and information about awards and reviews of the books. Also, the landing page is a beautiful watercolor painting of my writing cottage. My writing cottage was built for me in Buxton, Maine by my husband when he was alive, and it is just a gorgeous place to write. It is in my teeniest, tiniest backyard here in Arlington. It moved with me from Buxton, Maine, and it's just a joyous event to land on my www.tonibuzzeo.com landing page and see my cottage where I write. But also, I don't do a variety of social media. I'm pretty singularly focused on Instagram, and you can find me there at Arlington Nona.
Okay. And those links will be in the show notes, you guys. Um, Goodness gracious. What a fascinating conversation, Toni. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just such a pleasure to talk about my writing and my commitments, which is what sustainability is all about.
Right. I mean, I think that sort of melding your your passion, your education, your understanding, and just like into what you're doing to pass that on in your gentle, kind way is going to be so important for generations to come. I'm just so grateful for all that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, never neglect to go to your library to look for books.
You can find her there too, you guys. Awesome. Go to the library.